Today on Silver Forever, everything you'll ever need to know about junk silver. So stick around and enjoy the show. Alright, so first things first. What is junk silver? Some people call it constitutional silver. Dimes, half dollars, quarters. They were 90% silver. And that's because that's real money. They used to be the normal money in circulation. They were used as a currency. And you can even hear it has that special sound. These quarters that were produced back in the day before 1965 are actually much more valuable than their simple face value, in this case 25 cents for a quarter. These are actually worth closer to $5. There's approximately 0.18 troy ounces of silver in this quarter dollar. So if you were to melt this down at a refinery, you would be able to actually collect and refine the silver that's inside. And so for that reason, this is inherently valuable as opposed to a modern day nickel-clad quarter. Now, how valuable, might you ask? Well, if you were to take 20 of these silver coins in today's market, it's worth approximately the same as this $100 bill, because the actual metal in these coins makes them money. They're not just currency, as is the case for something like this fiat dollar. The paper, the cotton that this is printed on is not inherently valuable in the same way as this silver coinage is. These were the coins that were used every day and passed between people, heavily circulated. This was the currency of our country up through 1964. At that point, the government decided to change the composition of these coins, so things like dimes and quarters no longer contained any silver. Now there were some half dollars and eventually some dollars that contained up to 40% silver for a few more years after this, but nowadays none of our normal coinage actually contains any silver. And that's because the value of our US dollar has been inflated away over time, largely because it's no longer tied to monetary metals like silver and gold. Now, why would people even buy junk silver in the first place? Well, it's because it's inherently fractional. As opposed to buying a 1 ounce silver round or coin or a 10 ounce silver bar, if you want to buy fractional silver, junk silver, constitutional 90% silver, is often your best bet. And this is because fractional silver has extremely high premiums. Up until a few years ago, junk silver would often sell for at spot or below spot. That is the melt value of the silver inside. However, within recent years, that has changed dramatically and people are willing to pay a much higher premium on silver. Now, when people are purchasing junk silver, the way that it's typically calculated is not the same as if you were to buy pure silver bullion. In that case, people are often paying based on the price per troy ounce of silver. Now, in the case of junk silver, people use a conversion called face value. And so you actually do a calculation of how many dimes, quarters, or half dollars do you have, and you figure out what the face value is. So let's say I have 4 quarters here at 25 cents each. That's $1 face. If you were to go to a local coin shop or to go to an online vendor, they will tell you what the price is often in terms of face value. Let's say that at spot right now, these are worth about 18 times their face value. Well, a vendor might sell them to you at a premium, and so they might quote a price of 21 times face value or 22 times face value. So you would take this dollar and you would multiply it by the face value conversion rate, in this case 22, and you would be able to buy these 4 silver quarters for a price of $22. Now, if you were to calculate the amount of silver that's actually inside at 0.18 troy ounces per quarter, that's about 0.72 troy ounces of silver for $22. But I don't want to get too specific about conversions because we all know that the spot price of silver changes. So for years upon years, junk silver was almost treated like junk. And in fact, if the spot price was to rise high enough for silver, Many of these old silver coins were just simply sent to the refinery and melted down for their silver content. And unfortunately, what that means is that a lot of coins which might have carried a more numismatic premium, more of a value during a low spot price environment, were actually sent off for melting and were lost in the process. I think that nowadays a lot of people are becoming interested in the history of gold and silver in the United States. We're seeing a big rise in the value of things like pre-33 gold and 90% constitutional silver, like these silver quarters. And so they're starting to command a higher premium. Of course, that's a recent trend. We don't know that it's going to continue over time, so I would be careful about spending too high of a premium on things like these junk silver coins. But at the same time, they're not making them anymore, and I think that that's a decent argument for justifying higher premiums of these silver coins, considering that they're fractional. You know, if you were to pay for something like these 1/10 ounce pure silver coins, you'll find that the premiums on fractional silver are extremely high. And so there are a lot of inherent advantages to buying junk silver for its fractionality. And you might find that people in the precious metals community who have another foot in the prepper community really dig this junk silver because of its fractional nature, because people tend to recognize these coins and they're unlikely to be counterfeited, especially in the dimes and quarters. Which brings me to another point. You can often get your hands on dimes for the same price that you would on quarters. And in many cases, like myself locally, you can pick up halves at the same price as well. That being said, I have been to other local coin shops that will sell half dollars at a higher face value rate than dimes and quarters. The big guys, the people who are buying bags of the stuff, so think about like $1,000 face, for instance, of this junk silver, so that's 25,000 bucks. At that level, these people are really selling weight. And half dollars can often be a lot more desirable simply based on the fact that they are less likely to have worn down significantly due to circulation, like you might see in something like this barber dime. So now we're going to show you all the different junk silver coins to stack. We're going to start with the smallest denominations and work our way through time from the oldest to the newest options that you have. You can see I have all these tubes in the background that are labeled, and I like to have a little bit of everything in my stack for variety, but maybe you'll find that there's a particular type of junk silver coin that you would like to stack. So I'm going to show you all the options and explain the pros and cons of each. Now, typically if you were to go to a local coin shop or even to an online vendor and you order junk silver, you will probably order it in the form of dollars face. So if you were to buy a big bag, let's say on one of the big online vendors, you might buy $50 face. That's going to run you a little more than $1,000 in today's market. And they're going to send you whatever they want. You know, in many cases, if you're just buying random junk silver, they're going to send you things like these Washington quarters. And oftentimes you're going to find a lot of them are 1964. And this is because even back in the day, a lot of people recognized, hey, they're taking silver out of the coinage after 1964. Let's start holding on to these things. You know, when I ordered a $50 bag, I got all Washington quarters, and probably 40% of them were 1964s. And you know, if you're not making a coin collection, oftentimes 1964s are your best bet. And that's because they're inherently going to have less circulation than a lot of the older quarters. You know, these Washington quarters went back to as early as 1932. So of course, United States coins have been being made for centuries at this point. And there are some, like this old seated Liberty dime that I actually found in the junk bin, that we're not really going to be talking about because they're just so old. And basically anything that looks better than this one is going to have a numismatic value that exceeds its silver value. And so this, of course, is just so circulated, so heavily worn. You can't even see the year or mint or any other valuable information like that. Not valuable as a numismatic, but it's still valuable because of its silver content. Now, what we'll find when we weigh this is that a lot of the silver is actually gone, just simply due to the circulation and wear of being transferred between people, being run through machines. But I was willing to pick this up just as an example for you guys, and so for that, why don't you go ahead and give me a like in thanks. Now, the earliest dime that you're very likely to come across at some point in the process is the barber dime, and that's what this is here. Barber was the name of the designer of these coins, and you'll find a very similar design in the Barber quarter as well as the Barber half dollar. It's still Liberty, but it's just a unique design to the Barber coinage. Now, the disadvantage of the Barber coinage is that it's very often circulated, especially if you're going to find it in the junk bin. You can see some of these are pretty heavily worn, and these are actually fairly good looking relative to some that you might find in the junk bin. Now, because they're so old, they're more rare, and people are often willing to spend more money to acquire these Barber dimes. So it's not every day that you find them in the junk silver bin. Now, my favorite coin of all time, I got a ton of these, is the Mercury dime. The proper name for these coins is the Winged Liberty. I like to call them the Mercury dime. A lot of people do as well. And this is just my favorite design on any coin. And these were minted up through 1945. And so you will find these on a fairly regular basis. A lot of the online vendors will charge you more to get your hands on Mercury dimes, but very often at a local coin shop, they'll just be thrown in the bin with the rest of them. If you have a really high quality Mercury dime, something that's gradable, it might command a higher price than something like a simple junk silver Mercury dime. And of course, we have the Roosevelt dime. From 1946 to 1964, these coins were made in 90% silver. Of course, these dimes are still made to this day. In my opinion, that is kind of a disadvantage because a lot of people might look at these coins and not recognize them for what they are, which is 90% silver. You know, people look at the Mercury dimes, they're going to know every single time that that's something special, even if they're not acquainted with the arts of gold and silver. And in fact, you can still find these. I was just doing some coin roll hunting the other day and found this 1947 Roosevelt dime inside. This is silver. It's worth about $2 in silver weight, and I paid 10 cents for it. So that's another little hint. If you're looking to find free junk silver, it's still possible to do nowadays if you do some coin roll hunting. Half dollars are great to hunt. You'll find a lot of people do that on YouTube and as a hobby at home. The disadvantage there is that everybody's hunting half dollars and there's not that many in circulation. But the advantage is if you score, you're not just scoring $2 like on a Roosevelt dime, you're scoring closer to 10 or 11 bucks on a half dollar. So let's talk about the quarters now. We have the old Barber quarters, again with that same Barber head here. This is in 1898. Pretty nice design on the reverse. Again, you're gonna find these in the junk bin every once in a while. They're fairly thin and circulated typically. The next to be made were these standing Liberty quarters, and there are two versions of this. You might be coming across some that don't have these 3 stars on the bottom. If you do find those, go ahead and hold on to them. They are more valuable than the typical SLQ or standing Liberty quarter. One thing that you'll often find, especially if these are in the junk bin, you can't even see what year they are. The year actually should be right here, part of the coin that was really heavily worn down. If you want to see how worn that these can be, it gets pretty rough. I often see them looking like this. I'm not a huge fan of picking them up, but you know, I do it for the examples. I do it for the channel. So hit that like button to thank me, folks. And sometimes you might even find stuff like this. People who don't know any better might dip their old silver coins into some type of solution that's going to clean the coin. That really is just a disaster from a numismatic perspective. If you ever want to ruin the value of an old coin, clean it. Numismatists, people who like to collect coins, hate cleaned coins, and rightly so. It just doesn't look natural. You know, the color of this coin might look like it's fresh out of the mint, but you can see all of the circulation has worn away all of the features and the details and the definition, and so it just makes an unnatural looking coin. If you ever come across an extra shiny but yet flat looking coin in the junk bin, that's what happened. Now, after the standing Liberty quarters, that's when the Washington quarters started to be minted. And this exact same design was in production for the better part of a century, and only recently has it started to change. Again, same potential issue with the Roosevelt dimes, the Rosies. The uninitiated might not recognize this for what it is, which is 90% silver. You know, if you were to compare this to a nickel-clad coin with its exact same design between 1964 and 1965, one is worth 20 times more than the other. And think about that. Think about what that means for the integrity of our currency in this country. But I don't want to digress too much. Let's jump ahead and talk about some barber half dollars. And I recently was lucky enough to come across a couple like this one from 1905 and another from 1904 that are actually worth much more than their inherent silver value because of the relatively low mintages. And sometimes you really can score if you're digging around in a junk bin. I picked out these barber halves. I came home, I checked this red book, and I was able to determine their values were much higher than the melt weight based values that I bought them for. Now the next, one of the most beloved coins in American history is the Walking Liberty half. You recognize this design on the obverse because it's the same one that's used on the American Silver Eagle. And this reverse design is one of my personal favorites. I think it's a great look, but these are highly desirable. They're not always worn down really badly. So I'm starting to like stacking these a lot more, especially if you can get them at the same face value based price. If you're reselling these privately, Walking Liberty halves are going to be worth more than Benjamin Franklin halves, which we'll see next, which are going to be worth more than Kennedy's for most people who are buying privately, even if they might have slightly lower amounts of silver because of the circulation and wear. Next, half dollar, one of my personal favorites, and that is the Benjamin Franklin half. We have the Liberty Bell here on the back, and these ones were made up until 1963. Afterwards, that's when the newest half dollar came into play. 1964, Kennedy half dollar. If you had to guess which of all of these pre-1965 US coins had the most silver content, my guess would always be the 1964 Kennedys. And why is that? Well, it's because these were only made that one year, and it was the same year when they were going to discontinue making the 90% silver coinage, which meant that a lot of people held on to these. And so by weight, they're probably the least worn down, the least loss of all of these 90% silver coins due to circulation. Now, what's interesting is that starting in 1965 and actually up to 1970, these Kennedy half dollars were still being made and they still had silver in them. But instead of 90% silver, these coins are actually 40% silver. Anything that's made in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, all that stuff is going to be 0% silver unless it's some type of special proof. The United States still makes silver proof coins. This one's a 1992 S, and the proof just means that there's a really highly polished kind of mirror-like finish here on the field of the coin. You can still find 90% silver coinage. I'll show you another example of this, and that is these modern proof quarters. Now, one thing to point out, up until 2019, these were done in 90% silver. Now, though, they just moved over to doing 99.9%, so 3 nines fine silver for the proof coinage. Something really important to pay attention to, and I'll just show you. You can see they have more of this mirror finish. You may come across these in your pocket change every once in a while, or potentially even in the junk bin. Look out for proof coinage like this. Okay, so I told you about some exceptions to the rule, like this 40% Kennedy half dollar. Well, actually, even after they stopped producing those 40% Kennedy halves, they were still producing some silver dollars in the United States into the 70s. And here's an example of this in the OGP, or the original government packaging. This is a 1971 Dwight Eisenhower. This one has a pretty interesting reverse design. It shows the eagle on the moon with the earth in the background. These were actually made in 40% silver. But it's important that you look at the mint mark if it's on there to determine whether your coin is actually silver or not. Another shortcut that you can use just at a quick glance to see if you're dealing with a silver coin or not is to look at the edge of the coin. So if I were to look at the edges of these Roosevelt dimes, you can see right here that they have this silver color. But now let's compare it to these coins, which were actually late 60s coins, and you can really see that copper coming through on the edges here. So these coins are copper that are clad in nickel. So when you're coin roll hunting and you first open a roll of coins, really what you're hoping to find is this silver color poking out amongst all of this brown color. Of course, dollars used to actually be 90% silver as well, and they used to be dollar coins. One of the most popular coins in the entire community of coin collecting is the Morgan dollar. This Morgan dollar is an 1899. We have another one, a 1921 Morgan, and 1921 was actually the last year that these Morgan dollars were created in 90% silver. And that same year is when we transitioned over to producing this piece dollar. Those are typically going to go at prices that are closer to junk silver, but not the same as junk silver. And here's why. Not only are these silver dollars more valuable because they are collectible, but they actually have more silver than a dollar face of the other coins. About 0.7735 troy ounces of silver in each of them. But if you were to make up a dollar face out of these quarters or these halves or these dimes, even in their original mint condition, they only had about 0.723 troy ounces. And if you were to sell these by the weight to a local coin shop or a wholesale silver dealer, they are going to be assuming that due to circulation and wear, the silver content is going to be 0.715 troy ounces per dollar face. For my purposes, when I'm calculating the size of my silver stack at home, I like to keep it as simple as possible. And so what I'll do is I'll just split the difference. I'll say 0.72 troy ounces per dollar face, which means that a quarter would be 0.18 troy ounces, a dime would be 0.072 troy ounces, and a half dollar would be 0.36 troy ounces. But I still calculate these at 0.7735, and that's just because people don't really sell these in the same way as they do the halves, quarters, and dimes. They are more expensive. So a general ratio that you might expect for a Cull Morgan or a Cull piece dollar is going to be in the neighborhood of 30 bucks, 25 to 30 bucks, when the cost of a dollar face of 90% silver is about 20 bucks. Just a ballpark. Now, maybe you noticed that I haven't mentioned nickels at all. The reality is that nickels were not typically made out of silver. However, there was one point, and that was during World War II when the U.S. Mint started making nickels using some silver content, and they actually made it using 35% silver. And so that's what these are right here. They are called war nickels. These are going to be nickels that were made 1942 to 1945, and the way that you can tell that they are war nickels and they contain silver is that their mint marks are actually right over the Monticello building on the reverse of the coin. Now, if you're searching around online for the lowest possible premiums on silver, you might come across war nickels, and you may think, hey, maybe this is a good option for stacking low premium silver, and I would be really hesitant about that. The reason is it's only 35%. If dealers are considering this 90% silver to be junk silver, imagine how they feel about the 40% Kennedys or about the 35% war nickels. It costs a lot of money to actually refine the silver out of these old coins. You're very unlikely to get even spot price for war nickels. In fact, some dealers might not even want to buy them from you at all, and if they do, they might cut you back really far from spot price. So even though silver premiums are really high throughout 2021 and into 2022, and you might be able to find war nickels at only 10% premium, just consider the fact that you're probably not even gonna get 80% of spot price when you actually go to sell these things. And oh yeah, on top of that, they take up a ton of space if you're actually trying to stack silver seriously. So my recommendation would be don't pick up the war nickels. Now you might find these things too. These are called buffalo nickels. And you might be a bit confused, you know, because we have the silver buffalo rounds, which are really prevalent in the stacking community. And we have the gold buffaloes that share this same design. But don't be fooled. These do not actually have silver in them. And so these are not something that you should be trying to stack for silver because, hey, there's no silver inside. If you're like me and you live in the United States, we have our neighbors to the north, Canada, and every once in a while, you might actually come across some silver from there as well. In fact, I was able to find this silver dime from Canada in my change one day at a big box store. I was really stoked to find it. And so that's in the collection. It's the same general design on the reverse as their modern clad coins. And so just keep that in mind. Similar to the Roosevelt dime, the old ones are silver and the new ones aren't. So what does that tell you about all of the modern currencies? I also like to pick up periodically Canadian dollars, and these also have silver in them. I'm going to show you a couple examples now. We have the Death Totem, which is what this one is called, and we have the Voyager dollar. Those are not scratches, those are actually trees in the background behind the canoe. These are alternative options if you're looking to get into junk silver. Just keep in mind, there are plenty of examples of junk silver from all different countries around the world. It used to just be the norm that you would make your coinage out of silver, and that eventually changed for basically every country. While you might think that it's a good option to get into some low premium world coins, some junk silver, you really should be conscious that when you go to sell that stuff, people are not going to be paying you a premium for them, and they might even pay you back of spot for them. It's time for rapid fire tips. So where is the best place to find junk silver? Where are the best deals on junk silver? Well, the best deals are the ones that are free. One thing that might surprise you is that those Coinstar machines at your local grocery store, they'll often kick out silver coinage that people are dumping in there. So always check that reject slot when you're leaving the grocery store. You might be surprised at what you'll find in there. A lot of times people just don't know any better. You know, I guarantee you there's a lot of people in your life who don't understand what 90% silver is. On that note, let your heirs know. Let the people in your life know the rolls or the tubes or the bags of silver that you have aren't just regular everyday coins. People always wonder, how do these silver coins make it back into circulation? Well, that's how, you know, somebody passes, their family doesn't know any better, they just take it up to the bank and treat it like this quarter's worth 25 cents when it's really worth $5. And it would be a damn shame for you to stack all of this wealth and then have it be lost just because of a misunderstanding. Now, another great way to find some almost free silver is to do coin roll hunting. But what I will say is that the number of hours that I've spent doing it certainly don't justify the amount of free silver that you get out of it. I've never had one of those big scores myself. Another little hot tip, if you're digging through the junk bin at your LCS, be on the lookout because, you know, at one time they might be buying 1,000 dimes, and it might not be easy for them to go through and check every individual dime. They might do some spot checks, they might trust the person, someone might have made a mistake along the way, but I've definitely found nickel-clad coinage in the junk bin. If you do, just make sure to pull it out. We don't want anybody else paying silver prices for simple nickel-clad. Another tip, these old Whitman books, they're not valuable to an LCS owner. If you try to sell them your coins in one of these books, they're almost going to treat it like a hassle. They'll pull out all the coins, throw them in the junk bin, and then give those books away for free. How do you think I got mine? So dang, I know that that was a lot of information because I really told you that you're going to learn everything that you need to know about junk silver today. Now, I got tons of other videos in the back catalog. I've always put a ton of effort into my videos, and if you appreciate that, well, I would really appreciate you hitting the subscribe button. And the people who stick around to these end of the videos, they're really the true stackers. They're the people who are seeking the knowledge, who want to be best informed so that they can build the best possible stack that they can. If you learned anything in this video, if you love learning about gold and silver, then go ahead and hit the like. Let me know how much you appreciate it, because I appreciate the hell out of you guys, because we like to stack silver today, we stack silver tomorrow, we stack silver forever. Out.